Aloha, everyone. Thank you for joining today's May Hui webinar, Supporting Youth Mental Health, presented by Amanda Martinez from Mental Health America of Hawaii. Before we get started, I just want to go over some Zoom housekeeping and some other details. We'd like to thank our organizers for this training. Myself, the Hawaii Public Health Training Hui Steering Committee, Get Fit Kauai, and the Molokai, Maui, and Lanai Hio Coalition. We'd also like to thank our sponsors, the Hawaii Public Health Training Hui, the Western Region Public Health Training Center, and the Public Health Learning Network for helping us to provide today's credits. For learning outcomes for today, following this presentation, participants will be able to identify some of the impacts COVID-19 has had on youth mental health. You will be able to list risk factors and protect factors related to mental health. Participants will be able to apply strategies that are useful for supporting youth's mental health, and participants will be able to identify resources, crisis and non-crisis that are available for youth. So to get started, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker for today. Amanda Martinez is currently the training program manager for Mental Health America. For Mental Health America of Hawaii. Since 2017, she has trained thousands of youth and adults in Hawaii with Mental Health America Hawaii's youth suicide and bullying prevention and mental wellness trainings. She is also a certified trainer for mental health first aid and youth mental health first aid trainings. Amanda received her master's in public health degree from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, specializing in social and behavioral health sciences. She is interested in mental health wellness promotion among youth and young adults, especially among sexual and gender minorities. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Amanda.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maka. Give me 1 second, everyone. I'll go ahead and share my slideshow with all of you. It should be popping up in the next couple of seconds or so, but if it's not for some reason, go ahead and drop that in the chat and I'll do my best to troubleshoot on my end. But hello. My name is Amanda Martinez, as you just heard, the training program manager for Mental Health America of Hawaii. I'm really excited to be back again to continue this series with Hi-Fi. So if you've seen the other presentations that I've done, welcome back. It's great to see your names again. And if you're just hopping on for this one too, I'm excited to kind of meet you. I know it's in a webinar format, so you can only see me, but I do encourage interaction. So I like to keep the chat box open during the entire time and keep my eye on it. So we will have time at the end for any questions that may pop up. Like Maka said, feel free to drop your questions in the chat or the Q&A, or if you just have like kind of comments on the discussion that we're having, feel free to drop it in there. Sometimes I'll be asking all of you questions. I'll try to make it interactive, or at least as interactive as I can. I'm kind of an awkward person in general. I know it's even more awkward sometimes in a virtual format. So I appreciate your patience and grace with me. But for today, the presentation that we have for all of you is really surrounding supporting youth's mental health. So essentially what we're going to be going over is all of these things here. We're going to be taking a look at the kind of impact that we have been seeing thus far over the past couple of years on our youth's mental health. We're going to educate ourselves about the kinds of things that we want to be looking out or listening for in regards to risk factors, in regards to warning signs, but also protective factors, and what are the things that we can do when we are trying to connect with a youth who may be struggling with their mental health, or who maybe need to connect to more immediate resources. And that, of course, if you know anything about us here at Mental Health America of Hawaii, we love our resources. So we'll absolutely be providing you with a whole list of both local and national resources. So we will be making these slides available to all of you after today, so don't worry too much about scrambling to take any notes or to take screenshots or anything like that. Unless that's how you learn, then please, by all means, go ahead and do that. But you will be having access to all these slides, and I will make sure to drop my email in the chat at some point before we end. So feel free to reach out after that if you do have any questions. And awesome, I see someone from Wisconsin. That's super cool. I hope it's not too late over there. I'm not sure what the time difference is, but welcome. Okay. All right, so in regards to the kind of impact that we've been seeing thus far on our youth's mental health, just in general, kind of over the couple of years nationwide, across the board, we have seen an overall increase in feelings of anxiety, of depression, of substance use, of psychosis, of suicidality as well. for those who were already experiencing mental health struggles, we were also seeing an increase in the severity of those symptoms as well, right? So people who were already struggling before, we saw an increase in the severity of their own experiences and their own symptoms. We saw a whole other kind of pop-ups of anxiety or feelings of anxiety surrounding kind of re-entry or, transitions and being flexible and adjusting, having to deal with grief, right? Experiencing loss in multitudes of different ways, and also languishing, which is kind of a newer term, or at least to me, is a term I haven't really heard before, but that sense of languishing is that kind of sense of stagnation or that emptiness, right? It's that middle feeling between, feeling depression or feeling depressed, and then that kind of flourishing or thriving feeling. So it's that blah feeling, right? So if you've been feeling that blah feeling, you don't quite know where you're at, that's okay. There's a term for it now, and a lot of other people have been feeling the exact same way. As with any of our presentations and the statistics or research that we highlight, it is important to keep in mind that research is continuously being conducted and being made available. So this landscape is continuously shifting, continuously changing as that new data comes out. But hopefully over the next couple of slides, you'll have a pretty good general idea of the type of impact that we've been seeing thus far landscape-wise. Right, so what we also have been seeing here, when the pandemic first started, we saw a huge disruption of education, of schedules, of routines. I mean, a lot of our students went on spring break, right? And then they never really went back to school, right? They didn't realize that, that last Friday or that last day of school was going to be the last time that they were going to see their classmates and their friends and their teachers, and, go along with their schedules and routines for quite a while, right? Very long time. So it was a really abrupt disruption in life and rituals. Was a huge disruption and change in social interactions, right, with their peers, which we know for our youth are super impactful for identity formation and development. We saw a lot of experiences of grief, right? And what we also know from research is that grief can impact transitions into adulthood, right? And actually increase the likelihood of experiencing depression, right, in adulthood as well. And what grief really is a sense of loss, right? And we all have experienced some form of loss over the past couple of years, right? In combination with, trying to keep ourselves, our family members, the community at large safe, with having to transition into remote work, maybe back to in-person work, maybe a little mix or a blend of both. And for our youth as well, right? Having to transition to virtual learning platforms, into in-person, and sometimes back and forth between the two, all of these things, right? Is kind of that double dose, right? Having to adjust for all of these outside factors while still trying to process those experiences or those feelings of grief, right? And it's not just kind of the loss or death of a family member or a loved one, right? Of course, we experience grief in that, but that sense of loss can also be a loss of expectations, right? Loss of relationships. It could be loss of goals, right? And how you thought your year was going to be going. So, we can experience loss in a multitude of different ways, and loss really is in the eye of the beholder, but we do know that it does have an impact, especially on our youth's mental health. And what we really want to focus on for our adolescents is to improve mental health, right? Or to focus on those protective factors. And a really big part of that is increasing that sense of belonging, right? We're very social beings. We crave that feeling of connection, of feeling connected and supported and valued by the people in our lives, and especially so for our youth, right? That sense of belonging and really focusing on hope, having conversations about mental health that, everyone struggles sometimes. Everyone struggles with different things. It's okay to not be okay sometimes, right? It's not a problem to have a problem, but it is a problem if it's something that we feel like we can't talk about or that we can't reach out for help for. So what we want to also be focusing on is not just looking out for all of those risk factors, but what are those protective factors too, and how can we help our youth look forward? Right, so Mental Health America is a national organization that offers free online screening tools. So these are free online screens that you can take, and it'll give you some idea of where you're at. There's a whole bunch of different types of online screens that you can take. You can also access them through our website, which you can see right there on the slide. But here's just kind of a grab of comparing what they saw in 2019 versus 2020 in regards to experiencing severe anxiety and severe depression, right? So we can see that those lines and those trends are pretty comparable, but also kind of increasing over time, right? Especially as we move later into 2020. And what it gives us a visualization of those increasing rates, right? Those increasing experiences, especially over the past couple of years, we've only seen those trends get higher and higher. So what is interesting from these online screenings is that it wasn't just the pandemic that was behind these increasing rates, but it was a whole bunch of things, right? It wasn't just one factor there. It was current events, right? Everything that's happening in the world today, the political divide and climate of our country, things that are happening within our country, financial problems. A lot of people, their families lost jobs, which could have resulted in the loss of insurance coverage or a hit to finances and make it hard to access services, right? Or to be able to cover bills. And we saw a big increase in feelings of loneliness and isolation too. So all of these things had an impact on those experiences of depression and anxiety. So that's what I want you to take away from this graph here, is that it wasn't just one factor, right? It wasn't just one thing that was a result in these increasing levels. It's a multitude. Right. Mental Health America, as a national organization, also comes out with the State of Mental Health in America report every year. So they are able to analyze a whole bunch of different data to kind of see what is happening in each state. So for our youth here in Hawaii, for their 2021 report, they found that almost 13% experienced at least one major depressive episode. About 4% experienced a substance use disorder. And so of that almost 13% of youth who experienced one major depressive episode, 56.2% did not receive any treatment, right? Did not receive any help. So that's, just above half, right, of those who are experiencing a major depressive episode didn't receive any help for that. And I think that's really reflective of the type of help-seeking behaviors that we often see, not just here in Hawaii, but really across the country, right? There's a lot of barriers that are in place that make it hard for people to access mental health support or mental health services. One of the biggest ones is stigma, right? That unfortunately is still associated with mental health. And what stigma really has the harmful effect of doing is that it silences the discussion. It makes people hesitant to talk about what's happening, what's going on within themselves, and also hesitant to reach out for help, right? And we know that there's people out there who care, and there's so many resources that are out there, but stigma kind of makes it hard for people to actually reach out and connect with those. Barriers could also include insurance coverage, right, or finances. It could have to do with geographic location, right? Folks who live maybe in more rural areas make it harder for them to access mental health services or mental health support, right? So we see all these different kinds of barriers, unfortunately, that contribute to that higher statistic. In the United States, it's an average of about 10 years before someone gets help, right, for experiencing a mental health challenge. Like from the time point where they start experiencing signs and symptoms of a mental health challenge to the time point where they actually receive help for that, on average, it's about 10 years, which is a really long time, right? It was kind of shocking for me to hear that statistic at first, and I think it's especially concerning when we think about our youth. If we think of a 13 or 14-year-old who's starting to experience signs or symptoms of anxiety or depression, which we know are two of the most common mental health challenges with our youth, and it's on average 10 years before they get help for that, that's a really long time, right? There's a lot of changes that are happening and transitions that are happening within that time. They're still developing physically, mentally, socially, emotionally. And like I said, a lot of transitions and milestones that are happening. So I really do think the more conversations that we can have about mental health, especially with our youth, then the more messages that we can send that encourage help-seeking behaviors. We also keep our eye on rates of suicidality, right? So for here in Hawaii, here's a chart that shows the top causes for fatal injuries. Across the top, we have the different age groups. Along the left-hand side, we have the different rankings. So we can see here that suicide is one of the top causes for fatal injuries, kind of across the board, but especially so for the 16 to about 44 age groups. On a national level, suicide is the second overall leading cause of death for our youth. And anytime I hear statistics like that, or I see charts like this, it's quite concerning, right? It may even be pretty alarming to see that suicide is just so high up there. But I always look for little nuggets of hope, right? So one of my professors at UH Manoa, Dr. Janelle Sujimoto Matsuda, would always say, like, where are those nuggets of hope or nuggets of information, right? Where are those opportunities for us to focus our prevention efforts? Where can we step in and help? And we do know that prevention does work, right? If we can think about motor vehicle related accidents, so all of those yellow boxes on this chart specifically, you know, over the past couple of decades, we have seen car accident related deaths decreasing. And that's really a big part of that is really because of the vast amount of prevention efforts that have been put into preventing car accidents, right? So creating safer vehicles, establishing traffic laws like requiring seatbelts, raising awareness about drunk driving or distracted driving. And we've seen those prevention efforts work and have a positive impact. So I really think if we could put that same amount of effort towards suicide prevention, then we would also see a change in these numbers here. There are a lot of really great suicide prevention efforts that are happening here in the state. And if you want to know a little bit more about what those are and what those groups are doing, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to put you into contact with those who are running those task forces. Right, so we also gather some data from our youth themselves. So there is something called the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. It goes out to schools every couple of years. In the country, it's mainly given to high school aged youth, but here in Hawaii, we also administer it to middle school age youth. So it's a really big survey. It asks a whole bunch of different types of questions, but they're also really specific questions that capture suicidality and capture some other kind of mental health related questions too. So we can get that anonymous self-reported feedback directly from our youth. So 2019 is the most recent data we have available. I believe they administered the survey in 2021, but of course it takes some time to gather all of that data, analyze it, clean it up, and make it available to the public. But I'm hoping sometime this year we can get an update on these numbers. But from the 2019 survey, what we saw, 1 out of 4 middle school students, 1 out of 6 high school students self-reported having had thoughts of suicide in the previous year, okay, from when that survey was taken. 1 out of 6 middle school students, 1 out of 7 high school students reported making a plan. 1 out of 8 middle school students, 1 out of 10 high school students reported making a previous attempt before, right? So again, you know, looking at statistics like this, especially the ones that are coming directly from our youth, concerning, right? Sending off little alarm bells in our heads, right? Especially those who interact with youth and who work with youth and want to be there to help support our youth. So what I want you to take away from this is that there is still hope, right? That prevention does work. There are opportunities for us to step in and help, and that not everyone who thinks about suicide, not everyone who makes a plan, not even everyone who makes an attempt actually dies by suicide. So what that tells us is that there are a lot of opportunities for that prevention to happen, for us to step in and help. What we also want to be aware of and looking out for are those protective factors. You know, a lot of times when I attend presentations like these, or I'm a part of conversations like these, we're always very aware of what are the risk factors, right? What are the things that are going to put someone at a higher risk or put them in danger down the road? What are we supposed to be looking out for? Which is great, right? We absolutely should be looking out for those things. But sometimes what's missing from the conversation is what are those protective factors, right? What are those things that are also present in our youth's life that help make them more resilient? Okay? And resiliency, our youth are fairly resilient, and they only become more resilient when we make all of these things here stronger. The importance of practicing self-care, encouraging our youth to actually do things to take care of their mental health, to identify coping skills that are going to work for them and help them be able to just get through their day and get through their weeks and handle all the amounts of stress that they experience. Maybe it's relying on faith and spirituality, whether that's within an organized religion or outside of an organized religion, finding ways to take care of their spirits, having hope and meaning in life, or having goals for the future, finding things to look forward to get excited about, or to work towards and feel accomplished in. Making sure we're covering the basics too, right? Or our youth are covering the basics, I should say. Staying hydrated, eating a healthy, balanced diet, being physically active on a regular basis, making sure they're getting a good amount of sleep every night. And realizing that there's a lot of different types of access to supports, right? Think about those connections that our youth have with family, with friends, with peers, with supportive adults. So what research has been showing as of late is that making just one of these protective factors stronger is about 3 times more impactful than trying to change just one risk factor, right? And a lot of times these protective factors are things that we have some influence over, right? They're things that we can have some control over, that we can influence, like I was saying, as opposed to maybe a risk factor could be something that we don't have any control over, right? Maybe it's a past event that youth experience, or something that we don't necessarily have the ability or the power to change right then and there. But a lot of these things that we see on the protective factor side are things that we can bolster and that we can make stronger, and they're actually 3 times more impactful. So we definitely want to make sure that we are spending our time and energy not just being aware of what those risk factors are, but also making sure that we're bolstering these protective factors too. And then, so what, right? This might be one of my favorite slides in the whole presentation. Is one of the biggest questions that we often ask ourselves in public health, right? It's like, so what? Now that we've done all of this research, we've established that there are needs in our community. What are we going to do about it, or what can we do about it? So it is important that we educate ourselves, right? And to know what we are supposed to be looking out for is in regards to when a youth may be starting to struggle with their mental health, or even when they may be approaching a crisis. So these are a list of, this is a list of some of the different kinds of warning signs that we want to be aware of. If there has been any kind of mood dysregulation for 2 weeks or longer. Now, disclaimer, hey, I am not a mental health professional. So I'm not expecting you all to become mental health professionals with this presentation here. Unless you already are one, then thank you. We love you. We need you in this world. But my background is in public health, not that mental health professional or clinician side of things. But it's kind of creating that common language, right? To be able to talk about mental health and to educate the community on what things may look like. So when we say mood dysregulation for 2 weeks or longer, it's not meant for us to really diagnose, okay, to say that youth is experiencing depression or that youth is experiencing anxiety, right? That's not our goal for that we can use that 2-week mark as a good point to check in with them, right? It's a good indication to us that some time has passed and that youth seems to be struggling still. So it's a great opportunity for us as a supportive adult to do that check-in and to see what maybe is going on, to see if we are able to provide that support, or at least connect them to someone who can provide them with the support and help that they need at that time. Anyone who is experiencing anhedonia, right? So that really just means a kind of loss of interest. So the things that youth really used to love doing, right? Made them happy, brought them joy, satisfaction, made them feel good, just doesn't have that same type of effect. So they stop doing those activities, right? That kind of pulling away from things that they were interested in and not replacing it with other things, right? I think it's pretty typical for youth to explore different activities or to explore different interests. We want to encourage that, right? But if a youth is kind of pulling away and withdrawing from activities and not really exploring other ones, then that might be a good opportunity to check in with them, right? So if there's a youth who really enjoys playing baseball, right? Super into baseball, they've been playing for quite a while, they start, not really feeling it anymore, but then they say, maybe I want to try basketball, right? Okay, awesome. Maybe we can go try basketball, right? Sign you up for practices or with a team or a club, right? So that I think is a part of typical adolescent development, right? Exploring new interests and hobbies. But if that youth is saying, I'm just not really feeling baseball anymore, and I just don't want to do it at all or anything else, right? Then that would be the time or indication to us that we would want to check in with them, right? And kind of see maybe what's going on. Any kind of expressed suicidality should absolutely be a warning sign for us. Anyone who is talking about suicide, having thoughts about suicide, expressing themselves in different ways, whether it's verbally in conversations, whether it's posting about death, dying, or suicide on their social media, whether it's in written form, right, on homework assignments or in journals or writing letters, any kind of expression of suicidality should absolutely be a warning sign for us. And there are some really specific questions that we should be asking, which I am going to cover, I believe, on the next slide, but absolutely red flag warning sign. And then a negative impact on work or school, pulling away, disruption in activities, or interruption in relationships. Really, to put it simply, if it starts to impact someone's life, right? If that youth is not able to get through their day, like to wake up on time, to show up on time to class, to eat regular meals, to get a good amount of sleep every night, bathe on a regular basis, if it's starting to impact their ability to learn new things, so not just show up to class, but to listen and be engaged and present and absorb new information. Or is it starting to impact relationships, right? Is it starting to have an effect on friendships or relationships with loved ones? Then again, that's just a really good opportunity to check in with them. So if we are noticing that these signs are appearing for a youth that we may have in our lives, or, maybe even within ourselves, a lot of these kinds of things we see also happening with adults too, right, as causes for concern. Just know that there are a lot of resources that are out there, tons of information that are out there, and people who care and who want to help. So please reach out for that help, right? Connect to those resources. And if you don't quite know where to start looking for those help or those resources, reach out to us at Mental Health America for you. We'll always do our best to try to answer any questions or to help point people in the right direction. All right, so when it comes to wanting to connect with a youth who may be struggling with their mental health, or even adults, right? A lot of these approaches can be effective with adults as well. But especially when it comes to our youth, there are approaches that we want to do, right, that are shown to be effective and are recommended. And then there are approaches that are not the best, right, and not as effective. So I'm going to start with the left-hand side, right, that disconnect side. What we see is minimizing feelings, right? We never want to minimize feelings or experiences. We always want to be respectful of what that youth is going through and what they are experiencing. I think one of the biggest examples I can think of when it comes to minimizing feelings is, let's say there has been a breakup, right? It was that youth's first relationship, and so first breakup, pretty heartbroken about it, pretty upset about it. What are some things that we as adults might say to that youth to try to make them feel better? And feel free to drop those in the chat. What are those things that we say, well-intentioned, right, or have heard said before, to try to make a youth feel better after a breakup? Yeah, exactly. The first couple ones immediately. Right, there are other fish in the sea, plenty of fish in the sea. Just get over it, right? It will be okay. You're young. You'll get over it. Not a big deal. Yeah, exactly. It's just a phase, right? It'll pass. You're young. No biggie. He was ugly anyway. Okay, yeah, right? Just puppy love. Don't worry, you're still young. A new bus comes along every 15 minutes. I don't know if I've actually heard that one, but okay. This too shall pass. Yeah, first of many, everything happens for a reason. Someone better out there for you wasn't meant to be. Okay. Yeah, these sad feelings will pass. You're young, whole life ahead of you. Okay, so a lot of these, right, are all common words and phrases that we've heard before, right? All well-intentioned. We're trying to make that youth feel better about their experiences. And there's a couple of them in there that I like, right, that aren't actually minimizing feelings, but a lot of them, are actually minimizing that youth's feelings and their experiences. Like, they wanted that emotionally distant, non-committal salmon. That was their fish. And now that they don't have that fish anymore, that's a very real experience for them. And we want to be respectful of that, right? So we want to try to stay away from saying those things like, there's plenty of fish in the sea. You'll find love again, right? You're young. It'll pass. Like, we want to, of course, offer hope, right? And reassurances, but not false reassurances. You'll feel okay tomorrow. Things will get better next week. We don't necessarily know that, right? Things may be even worse tomorrow than they are today. Things may not get better next week, but what we do know is that things can get better with time, right? If there's one thing that we know for sure is that everything changes, right? So the way that you're feeling right now will change eventually, right? I don't know when that'll be, right? I don't know when that time will come, but you don't have to get there alone, right? You don't have to go through this alone. You have people in your life who care about you, who want to help you through this, right? So we want to be validating with feelings and emotions instead of minimizing. When we're asking questions, when we're doing that check-in, right? How are you? Are you okay? Is there anything that you'd like to talk about? I noticed that you haven't really been acting like yourself. Is everything okay? It was a really great question. That's what we mean by checking it, right? We're just trying to find out some more information, but especially if we are starting to notice a lot of warning signs, okay? Especially the ones that are express suicidality, right? If we are worried that a youth may be having thoughts of suicide, then we also need to ask directly about those ones too. Okay, are you thinking about suicide? Are you or could you be thinking of taking your life? It's a common thing we've heard before that we don't necessarily want to ask direct questions like that we don't want to talk about suicide with our youth because we don't want to put ideas in their heads, okay? And this is not true. There's tons of research out there that shows that by asking direct questions and by talking about suicide in a safe way, you are not putting the thought in someone's head. You are not planting that seed. If we don't ask, then we don't know. And if we don't know, how are we supposed to try to help that person? Now, I will acknowledge that it can be a really hard and uncomfortable question to ask, especially if it's someone that you care about or someone that you're close to. So we have to be really aware of asking that question in a direct way, but also not embedding it or asking it in an implied way, right? Implying answers like, you're not thinking of suicide, are you? Right? Not how we want to ask it. We want to be as calm as we can, as direct as we can. But if you truly feel uncomfortable or unprepared in asking a direct question like that, don't worry, there's even resources and people who can help in moments like that. Like, you can go to a mental health professional, you could go to a school counselor, you can go to a doctor, right? You can go to another person, another supportive adult in that youth's life and say, I'm really worried about this youth and I don't quite know how to ask this question. Can you help me? That's absolutely an okay thing to do, right? All of these things, I'm not telling you to try to burden you, to try to make it seem like it's all on your shoulders to save someone's life. So it's okay to reach out for help, even when you're trying to help support another person. And absolutely. So when you're asking that question, all you have to do or ask is say, are you thinking of suicide? Or are you or could you be thinking of taking your life? Right? Super direct, really simple, just like that. If you haven't asked a question like that before, I encourage you to practice, not like role play, right, with your colleagues or with a friend or anything like that, but just practice saying those words out loud, whether it's to yourself in a mirror or maybe when you're on your drive to work, right? Just saying those words and asking a question like that. That way, if you do ever have to ask a question like that, it won't be the first time that you've ever said those words out loud. Right? You've already said those words out loud, and hopefully it'll take a little bit of the pressure off if you do ever have to ask that kind of direct question. But it is important that we ask those direct questions, especially if we are concerned that a youth may be having thoughts of suicide. We never want to keep it a secret either. This is a really big one that I stress when I have these conversations with our youth as well, when our youth suicide and bullying prevention training, is that this is not the kind of secret that we should keep, right? So if we have a youth come to you and they start opening up about their mental health, or especially if they're opening up about thoughts of suicide, but they say, don't tell anyone else, right? Don't tell my parents, or don't tell the school counselor, or don't tell my friends, right? Just keep it between us. And I understand wanting to be respectful of that friendship or that connection that you have with that youth. But when it comes to this, it's just not the kind of secret that we should keep. Many times, especially if you work and interact with youth in a professional sense, those roles are considered mandated reporters, right? So you are legally obligated to report if a youth is in danger of hurting themselves or hurting other people, but I think it's just really great practice, right? That this is not the kind of secret that we should keep. The way that I look at it is I would rather have my friend or loved one be angry and upset with me and alive or okay and getting the help that they need than to have something possibly happen to them and for me to look back and think, why didn't I say something when I could have? Or why didn't I try to help when I had that opportunity to? So I do see a question that this will be only asked that question if they are showing symptoms. If you suspect, right, or if you are concerned that that youth may be having thoughts of suicide, then absolutely we should be asking that question. If it's more kind of causes of concern, right, like the other kinds of warning signs that we saw, that youth is not quite acting like themselves, seems to be losing interest in different activities, they're kind of pulling away, isolating, changes in patterns or behaviors, then we definitely want to check in with them, but it's not like you're going to run up to them immediately and ask them if they're having thoughts of suicide, right? It's kind of more of a process. It's going to be a part of that check-in. The more questions you ask, the more information you find, the more concerned you become, then yes, absolutely make sure you ask that question there. We also have to make sure that we don't make it about us, right? Or overshare from ourselves, right? So sometimes when we want to try to connect with the youth, we'll bring up past experiences of our own, right? Like I went through a breakup, I went through something similar. Like this is how I felt, this is how I got through it. Maybe that can help you, right? And we use it as a way to try to connect, right? But really, ultimately, when it comes down to it, it is about them, not about us. So we do have to check ourselves sometimes. There's kind of that fine line between offering that help and that support, providing information, and then just freely giving away advice, right? Unsolicited advice. So unless someone is asking for our opinion or asking what we would do if we were in a similar situation than them, we have to do our best to make sure that we're not just sharing stories, right, of our own past experiences, unless that youth wants us to. And we can ask them, I've gone through something kind of similar. If you want to hear about it, like I'd be happy to tell you, just let me know. Right? I do see a question too, is how do you approach someone who talks to themselves and says they're hearing voices? So someone who may be experiencing psychosis, there are ways that you can try to connect and support them at that time. I think it's a little bit beyond the scope of this presentation, unfortunately. But there are resources out there and information that you can connect with. There's other trainings out there too. If you haven't taken Youth Mental Health First Aid, I really suggest you signing up for one of those if you have the opportunity. They do cover how to connect with someone who may be experiencing psychosis. A lot of it is kind of de-escalation techniques and strategies, and try to get that person connected to a mental health professional, to kind of summarize it a bit. But if you do have the opportunity to take Youth Mental Health First Aid, I really encourage all of you to do that. We do offer Youth Mental Health First Aid on a fairly regular basis for free, open to the community. So feel free to sign up for our newsletter or check our website for any upcoming trainings there. But that's also a really good question because we know our youth do experience symptoms of psychosis too. Okay, so why don't we transition over into the right-hand side of the slide, right? All the things that we want to do, right? When we are trying to connect with the youth who may be struggling, we want to listen with our entire bodies, okay? We want to listen with our ears. We want to listen with our eyes. We want to listen with our hearts and with our stomachs, which I know makes no sense probably right now, but I'll explain what I mean. We want to listen with our ears, right? We want to listen to the things that people are saying, or maybe what they're not saying. Sometimes we have to read in between the lines a little bit. We want to listen with our eyes. So we are being observant, right? We are looking out for changes in patterns, changes in behaviors. Is someone acting differently than they normally do? Do they seem down, right? We're being aware of body language and how that youth is expressing themselves. And we want to listen with our hearts and with our stomachs too, right? I know it's not a very scientific thing for me to say, but if something that someone says or something that someone does just doesn't quite sit right with you, it gives you that bad feeling in your stomach, don't just ignore that feeling. Okay, don't just ignore that instinct. It could be there for a reason. So ask more questions, right? Try to find out more information. And you can let a youth know that you're asking because you care. You can say it exactly like that. I care about you and I'm worried or I'm concerned and I just want to make sure that everything is all right. Are you sure there isn't anything that you'd like to talk about? I just want to be a listening ear. No judgments from me, right? I just want to hear about what's going on with you. And we have to follow that up with actually not being judgmental, right? That kind of goes back to checking ourselves a little bit. Even when a youth may be bringing up things that we don't necessarily agree with, right? Or think is healthy for that youth. Sometimes we do have to check our judgments, and we want to be there to support that youth, of course. But we don't want to try to challenge them either, right? Or be argumentative. So it's, kind of learning what our own biases may be, things that we may not necessarily agree with, and remind ourselves, right? It's really about this youth. It's not about me or my opinions. And my ultimate goal is to keep this person safe, right? If their safety is in danger at any point, then we are immediately taking action. But if not, then we also have to try to meet that youth where they're at, right? When we're having these conversations, when we're trying to provide that support. Right, so asking those direct questions, I jumped into that one a little early, I think, with asking questions, but we do need to ask those more direct questions if we are concerned that someone may be having thoughts of suicide. A lot of times people will go and stop at, are you thinking of hurting yourself, right? Which I still think is a really great question to ask. We definitely want to make sure that we know if our youth are self-harming, but there's kind of a gray area when it comes to self-harm. Not everyone who self-harms is necessarily suicidal, right? Yes, they are in pain. Yes, they are hurting. They think the only way to release some of that pain or to alleviate some of that hurt is to physically hurt themselves. But the intent isn't always to die, right? So it's a great question to ask. We want to ask if they are hurting themselves. But if we are worried that they have thoughts of suicide, we need to take that extra step too and ask if they're having thoughts of suicide. Okay. We want to be calm, or as calm as we can be. On the outside, even if on the inside we are stressed, right? We're experiencing high levels of anxiety. I took a training a number of years ago that compared it to being a duck floating on water. And I was like, what kind of training is this telling me to be a duck, right? But I'm telling you all to be ducks too. On the surface, that duck is cool, calm, chilling, floating, just really gliding gracefully across that water. But underneath the water, the duck is paddling, right? But we don't necessarily see that happening. So that's what we want to be. On the outside, we are modeling that calm demeanor as best as we are able to, but on the inside, we are paddling, right? We're thinking about, what's my next question that I'm going to ask? What is my next phone call going to be? Who am I going to connect this youth to get them the appropriate type of help and support that they need? When connecting with youth, we want to act our age too, right? And this was another one when I first started, I'm like, well, Doc, like, why would you not want to act, act your age, right? But really what it means is be accepting, right? Be genuine and be empathetic, right? Youth are very observant, right? They're going to see right through us trying to be cool or use terminology that is hip, right? Or in at the time. So just be yourselves, right? Be accepting, be non-judgmental, be genuine in your efforts, right, to connect and be empathetic, have compassion. And that is what's going to translate over to that youth and make it easier for them to want to open up to you, right? Because they're going to see, like, okay, maybe this person actually cares, right? So then I'll tell them a little bit about what's going on and we can start that conversation. Using I statements is also really helpful to guide that conversation or to guide that check-in. I know sometimes it's easy to be at a loss of words or forget what to say or what to ask next, especially during a more difficult conversation. So we can kind of fall back on those I statements, right? I noticed that you haven't really been yourself lately, right? I noticed that you haven't been hanging out with your friends as much, right? You haven't really been showing up to practice on time. That you've been late to school, right? A little more than usual. So using these I statements, what we're doing is stating our observations, right? We're letting the youth know that I see you and I care about you. And I just want to make sure that you're okay, or I just want to help if I can help. It also gives the youth an opportunity to correct us if we're wrong, right? Maybe they just have a super stressful week because they have a million assignments to get done. They've got a couple big exams to study for, some group projects to work on, all in addition of school practices, right? Or sports practices, or performances to prepare for, or trying to maintain a social life while trying to keep on top of home responsibilities, right? Chores, maybe you have to do a little babysitting with younger siblings, all these things that are just piling up, right? So it gives the youth the opportunity to correct us sometimes too. Like, I just got a lot going on this week. So it's kind of just piling up, right? And then we can offer support maybe for that too, right? If they need help kind of studying or maybe help with a homework assignment, for example. So asking questions and utilizing those I statements can really help in gathering the information that we need to help inform our next steps. And then know what your organizational procedure is. If you are working for a school and organization where you interact with youth on a frequent basis, please make sure you know what your organizational protocol is. If you do have a youth who's struggling with their mental health or experiencing a crisis, it's best to know what that organizational protocol is beforehand, as opposed to you being in the middle of a situation and not knowing what to do, right? You'll already know at least where to find that procedure. You'll know what your next steps are. And if your school organization doesn't have a protocol or a policy in place, now would be a good time to establish one. And there are a lot of really great resources out there as well, to help in doing that too. Right, so it is also important to brainstorm and to establish a support plan. Right, so support plans are not just for people who may be in a crisis. They actually should be used by everyone, right? Youth and adults, crisis, non-crisis. It's good to know what that support plan is, right? So who is it that they talk to that makes them feel better? Who is it that they know they can go to when they need someone to lean on or to vent to or to get that extra help and support from? Or who are the people, or say, and who are the people that they like talking to because they just like talking to them, right? They're super funny. They got the best of memes. They find the funniest TikTok videos and they just feel happier and better and laugh a lot after interacting with them. Making sure our youth identify who those people are too, right? We got a lot of different types of connections in our lives. So we want to make sure our youth are aware of those different types of connections as well. If they have a list of providers with phone numbers, make sure that they have that contact information on hand, saved in their phones. I always encourage youth to save the crisis resources in their phones as well, right? The Hawaii Cares line, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the crisis text line, having those already programmed into their devices or into their phones makes it easier for them to access if and when they ever need to. And then help our youth kind of explore those bigger questions like, who am I? What kind of person do I want to be? How am I treating the people that I have in my life? Right? What kind of impact do I want to have? What kind of footprint do I want to leave behind? What gives my life meaning? Right? And then what helps them feel better when they aren't feeling okay, when they're feeling down or upset or angry or frustrated or overwhelmed? What are those things that they can turn to to try to make themselves feel better? And there's a lot of different ways for our youth to be able to practice that self-care as well. We want to encourage them to brainstorm all those different ways too, right? So we can have a brainstorming session with our youth to think of self-care as being in different categories. It's people, that's places, and that's activities, right? Who are the people? Again, what are those connections? Who are the people that that youth has that they can turn to and lean on? What are those places, right? Where are the places that they go to practice self-care? And it helps to be specific, right? They say like being at home, like, cool, where in your home do you like to be, right? Is it your room where you have some kind of private space to unwind and relax, maybe listen to music? Is it being outside, breathing in fresh air and connecting with your outside environment? Is it being in your kitchen where you can cook and bake and connect with the other folks in your household? Like going to the beach, right? What's your favorite beach? Where's your favorite place to jump into the water? If you like hiking, what's your favorite hike, right? Favorite hike to go on. So it helps to be as specific as possible, and same with activities too. I mean, there's so many activities out there that our youth can turn to, right? To support themselves, listening to music, movies, being creative, cooking, baking, right? Physical activities, taking a break every once in a while, right? Taking a nap, making sure you get a good night's sleep, having some alone time. I know we stress the importance of connecting with other people, but sometimes the way to recharge batteries is just spending some time alone, right? And that's okay. Encouraging our youth to learn different kind of breathing exercises, or maybe start getting into meditation. We can help guide that as well. So tons of activities that our youth can do. And it is okay for our youth to distract themselves sometimes for a little bit, right? Every once in a while, to just get their mind off of something, to watch something that's funny, right? Or something that makes them feel better. That way, when they come back to the present, they'll feel a little bit better about tackling whatever problem it is that they may have in front of them. or just to continue on with their day in general. So I know I have been talking for quite a while. And I did promise I would try to make this a little bit interactive at least. So I want to do a little bit of an activity and just ask this question: what has given you hope? So I actually have a poll that I have created for this. I'm going to drop the link into the chat box. So if you feel comfortable in sharing, what has given you hope, what has kept you going over the past couple of years, please feel free to click on that link or to send a text message. Is what you can see right there on the slide. Okay. You can go to that link or you can join by text. So all you have to text is Amanda M233 to 22333. So anything you want, right? What has given you hope? And I'm going to pull up what I am talking about here so I can show you what I'm hoping to do with this. This is what has kept us going. Okay. I see faith, I see jazz, music, family, kids, children, husbands, okay, hope, nephews, meditation, right? Gratitude, awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I see some things in the chat too, right? I get hope from how my kids have managed to balance things during the pandemic, right? So our youth, right? Like I said, pretty resilient. But there are things that even they can teach us sometimes. And that we can get inspired from. Faith in God, family, friends, kids. Like, look at all of these things. These are all of your responses. These are the things that are giving you hope, right? That have kept you going over the past couple of years. And maybe these things have changed, right? Maybe the things that were giving you hope a couple of years ago aren't necessarily the same things that are giving you hope now, right? And that's okay, right? Things change, right? Life changes, we support ourselves in different ways, but look at all of these things, right? These are all the things that we want to hold on to and that we want to keep putting our time and energy in and keep pushing forward. The only way we have gotten to today is because we have done so together. And the only way we are going to continue pushing forward is if we do so together as well, right? So I see a couple of the biggest ones on here. It has to do with connections, family, friends, right? Faith, spirituality, absolutely all these things. So thank you for that word cloud. I'll keep it open if you want to keep adding to it. I will also make sure I save this. I'll take a screenshot of it. I'll send it over to Maka, and she can make it a part of that follow-up email. So you can just have this to take with you as well, right? These are all the things that we want to hold on to help us keep pushing forward. Kind of transitioning from that, right? Taking care of yourselves is a really big part of taking care of other people. So I know the past couple of presentations that we've had have been pretty focused on the importance of self-care. So if you haven't seen those, if you weren't present or you haven't watched the recordings, I encourage you to go watch them. So there's a lot of different ways to practice that self-care, but make sure that you're making the time for it, even if that's only 5 minutes out of your day, a couple times a day. If you could do so on a regular basis, then that is you investing in yourselves. Okay, that is you investing in your mental health. You can't pour from empty cups, so find what fills up your cups, and that's going to put you in a better position to show up for other people. Just to kind of maybe highlight a couple of these that we see here, the importance of practicing self-care is staying present focused, right? Focusing on the moment, the things that we have control over. A lot of times people who maybe struggle with anxiety have a hard time staying in the moment, right? I definitely struggle with anxiety, and I do definitely struggle to stay present focused at times. Whether it's because we're stuck thinking about the past, right? Ruminating over things and how it's still affecting us. Or maybe we're stuck thinking and worrying about the future, right? And things that we can't predict or can't control. So if we're spending time stuck in the past or stuck worrying about the future, then we're spending time and energy on things that can't be changed or, that we don't have any control over. So we can try to plan ahead to the best of our ability, right? But no one can tell the future. No one can predict the future to be able to do that 100%. But if it helps to plan ahead a little bit, but also keep in mind that we can be flexible and help ease some of that anxiety. But being present focused can kind of help, right? Just being grounded, being in the moment, and help you kind of push through your day or continue getting through your week. Practicing radical acceptance. Hey, it sounds really simple. Hey, and the explanation of it is kind of simple as well. Is if I can change something, I'll change it. If I can't change it, then I need to do my best to accept that it is unchangeable and try to move forward, right? Or try to move on. When we're holding on to thoughts of unfairness, right? It's not fair that these things are happening, right? Or how could this happen, right? And we don't quite understand it. It's keeping us in that stuck place, right? It makes it hard to keep moving forward or to keep pushing forward, or even to just start processing. So we have to do our best to radically accept that there are sometimes people and things that happen in this world that we have absolutely no control over. And I do want to note that acceptance is not agreement. Okay? Accepting that something painful happened and moving forward is not the same thing as saying it's okay that that painful thing happens, right? But rather that I am putting my time and energy in healing from it and trying to move forward as opposed to really focusing on it and ruminating on it. And this takes practice. Sometimes it's a daily practice, but it's absolutely possible, right, to put our energy towards that forward movement. And sometimes it takes the help of a mental health professional. So if you feel like this is an area of your life where you need to work on a little bit, but you're not quite sure how to start or where to do that, connect with a mental health professional. It can absolutely help guide you in that. If you have or need any kind of support around experiences of loss, right? If you are currently grieving, or have been on that grief journey, please reach out for help and find support in that in the best way that you are able to. We've all experienced loss in different ways over the past couple of years. So make sure that we ourselves are finding support around that. We want to focus on creating balance in our day, right? Balancing all of the things that we are juggling with all the many hats that we are wearing. Add in humor and novelty, right? It's okay to get lost in TikTok for a little while. I say a little while, but really it's like a couple hours, right? But getting lost, right? Watching funny videos, watching things that just make you laugh or make you feel better, or maybe discovering something new, a new interest or a new hobby that you can get into, whether it's individually or with a friend, or maybe something you and your family can get into. Creature comforts, right? Having pets that you like and get along with, right? Could be a great way to practice that self-care as well. We want to stick to routines as best as we can, which also means scheduling that self-care, utilizing social media responsibly, right? If we are sharing information or resources, making sure we're doing our homework, that we are asking ourselves, okay, is what I'm sharing helpful? Or is it going to be beneficial to the people who are seeing it? If that answer is no, or maybe, or I'm not sure, it may be best to not pass that information along. And spend time in nature, right? Get outside, breathe in that fresh air, connect with your outside environment. It does wonders in boosting your mental health. All right, so for skills learning and sharing, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we had a pretty interactive presentation, the last one called the practice and coping skills, where we dove pretty deep into all of these, or both of these and more, right? But there are specific coping skills out there that we can utilize in our day to help us deal with increasing levels of stress and anxiety, but there are also skills that we can help our youth learn as well, right? Teaching diaphragmatic breathing techniques, right? We always have our breath. Right? Breathing exercises can be used no matter where you are, no matter when you need it, without drawing too much attention to yourself, right? So teaching the youth a couple different breathing exercises gives them a really great tool that they can take anywhere. And then the dive response is a really great one too, right? Kind of activating that gland in our nose that keeps us from breathing when we're underwater, right? So it slows down our blood circulation, slows down our heart rate, because it's trying to keep all the oxygen inside of our bodies whenever we are submerged. So we can activate that dive response by laying that cold wet rag over this portion of our face and holding our breath for about 10 seconds, or doing some deep breathing exercises. Or if you get that bowl of cold water and just stick your face in it, hold your breath for about 10 seconds, both of those things will activate that dive response. So it's a really quick and easy way to calm your body down if you're starting to feel overwhelmed, or if a youth is starting to feel overwhelmed as well. So we have calls to action too, right? I didn't want to make this just a whole hour and a half almost of me talking at you and giving you information and resources. I do hope the information that you have been hearing thus far has been helpful, but also is that kind of call to action, right? We want to stand up to microaggressions, that mental health struggles are more than just someone being really sad, right? More sometimes than someone just being lazy, right? Or something that they can just snap out of. That's not it, right? There's a lot more that's going on behind that. And we need to educate and raise awareness surrounding it, but also need to stand up to those microaggressions that happen. We want to normalize mental health, especially those help-seeking behaviors within our communities. Everyone struggles with different things. Everyone struggles in different ways. That is okay, right? That is a normal part of being a human being. But we also want to reach out for help and support if we do need that. We can take screens too, right? A lot of those free online screening tools our youth can take too, right? And again, it's not meant for our youth or even ourselves to diagnose ourselves to say, I have anxiety, right? Or I have depression. But it's a good starting point, right? To give us a better idea of maybe what's going on. They do give recommendations at the end too, based on the results, right? Maybe you should take these results to a medical professional or to a mental health professional, and they can kind of explain a little bit more about what these mean. We want to build community resilience, right? By building up our own resilience. Hey, we want to model practicing self-care and taking care of ourselves, or sometimes even admitting when we're not okay sometimes, right? We want to model that for our youth and for our young ones too, so they can see, right, what that likes and what's that like, but also see that it's okay to do that. You know, it is okay to admit sometimes that this is really hard, right? And I think I need to lean on someone else for a while just to help get me through this. There's tons of other kind of trainings and stuff that are out there as well. So let me just check the time really quick. So I do want to do another activity. This is one of the ones that I do like doing, but essentially there is a training that's out there. It's called Sources of Strength. It's a really awesome one. But a part of that training, what they do is one of their calls to action. So I'm going to drop another link into the chat. It's going to take you to a Google Jamboard to a You Belong pledge. And I want us to start to think about maybe filling this out, right? So this is the You Belong pledge, okay? What it says is, I pledge to have the courage to encourage others and to believe that my voice has the power to help others. I respect that we come from diverse families, cultures, right? You're all moving around, generate it. It's cool though. Families, cultures, backgrounds, beliefs, and experiences, right? I commit to building strengths in my own life so that I can help others feel that they belong to our community, right? So as you can already see with this, you can definitely interact with these pledges. So what I want to happen is for us to kind of start filling out these pledges. So the easiest way I've found is on this left-hand side here, you have a toolbar, okay? There is a sticky note. If you click on it, you can pick whatever color you like, but I want you to make a pledge, right? Moving forward, how do you pledge to support youth, right? Support a youth's mental health that you have in your life, whether it's in a professional capacity or in a personal capacity, right? So I pledge to be there for you, for example. You can save it, right? You can add as many as you want. You could drag it around. So don't worry too much about like dragging the actual pledges on there. If you want to try writing, you can absolutely do that. But there's also a bunch of pages on here. So on the top, if you scroll to the right, and you want to maybe find a blank one, please feel free to do that. If you want to add to the first one, that's totally fine too. But I'll just give you a couple minutes maybe to start filling out these pledges. And this is also something I will make sure I save. I will leave open for you, but I will make sure I save it so Maka can send a screenshot of these too as well. I'm loving the ones I'm seeing so far, at least on this first page here. You can, like I said, scroll to the other changes or the other pages too. Sticky notes seems to be the easiest way to add your pledges. And if it's really hard for you to navigate, or if the link for some reason is not working for you, please feel free to drop your pledges in the chat box and I'll go in and add them for you. I'm loving the pledges that I'm seeing so far. Everyone wants to add on first page, it looks like. Okay, so sorry, it says some people can't get in. So luckily I did create a couple of other ones. So I'll just drop all of the links in there and then hopefully okay, so there's a couple links to a couple different Jamboards. So if you're getting that error message that says that there's too many people on that document right now, you can try clicking on the other links. I'm seeing some good ones here too. Right? Awesome. I'm loving all of this. So I pledge to listen without judging. I pledge to listen compassionately. I pledge to actively listen to you, right? To listen to you completely. I pledge to be there for you. I pledge to be a safe person for youth. I pledge to ask how you're doing, right? To just check in sometimes, right? I pledge to honor your individuality. I love that one. I pledge to stop what I'm doing to say, do you want to talk? Yeah, right? I pledge to suspend my judgments. I pledge to be a safe place for our youth. That's wonderful. Right, so I'm saving the chat really quickly just because I want to make sure that I can go back in, and for those of you who are unable to drop your pledges into the Google Doc for right now, I'll go back in later and add them for you before I share them with Maka. But this is awesome, right? This is your call to action. Okay? This is you pledging to be of support to youth that you have in your lives in the best way that you are able to. So thank you so much for adding these in here, for engaging with me, and participating in the activities that I have for you. This is exactly what we want to see, right? This is exactly what we want to have happen as a community of supportive adults, right? And trying to support the youth that we have. So awesome job. Okay, so I know we did promise to leave some time at the end for some questions. So like I said, I'll leave those pledges open. I'll leave that word cloud open as well. But I do have a couple more slides to quickly show you, and then we can open up for questions that may have come up. But there's tons of resources that are out there, right? There's a lot of crisis resources we can be aware of. The Hawaii Cares Line, National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the Crisis Text Line, absolutely all resources that I share far and widely. The Trevor Project is also a really great resource that I always try to share too. It's for our LGBTQ plus youth, right? So if you have a youth in your life who know, or who you know identifies as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, is not sure, or any other identity that is out there, or maybe doesn't want to be labeled by one identity or labeled period and needs extra help and support, the Trevor Project is a really great resource. They have their own 24/7 helpline. They have their own chat feature. They have their own text feature. And tons of other information and resources on their website as well. Knowing that there's some great organizations too, like the Domestic Violence Action Center or Child Welfare Services. We know that people have been spending a lot more time at home, but that every home is a safe place, right? So if you are concerned about a youth who maybe is unsafe, or someone in your life who may be experiencing intimate partner violence, please absolutely feel free to reach out to these organizations. They have tons of information and can help. Yeah, so all of these, right? Trans Lifeline is also a really good one. So like I said, we will make these slides available to you, and it's going to have all of these resources on it. But if you're looking for other kinds of resources or mental health services or programs, please feel free to reach out to us as well. I think our contact may be on the next slide, but there are also really great free apps out there that you can download to help support your own mental health or help support the mental health of a youth that you may have. You know, our devices are pretty ingrained in our lives. They're great tools that we can utilize to help support our own health. So we've got things like COVID Coach. We've got CBTI, which is an app that helps you kind of monitor your sleep, right? And check into your sleep habits, because we know sleep is a really big part of our overall health, but a lot of people's sleep has been impacted over the past couple of years. So when that happens, of course, it happens or has an impact on our mental health. So we want to make sure that we are doing our best to try to get as much sleep as we are supposed to be getting. And then here's all of our contacts, right? So if you're on Facebook, we're on Facebook too. We run a couple of different groups. I say we as an organization because I'm not really on social media anymore, but as an organization, right, Mental Health America Hawaii has a couple groups that we run on Facebook. We got a couple Instagram pages if you want to learn more about self-care or, you know, be up to date with the activities that we do. We're on YouTube, right? We have a YouTube channel where we post recordings of previous trainings, right? Previous presentations that we've done or hosted. You can find those recordings there. Apparently we're on TikTok now, which is kind of news to me. We just updated our trainings, right? So yes, we have a TikTok page now. I'm excited to see what is on that. But please absolutely follow us on whatever social media platform you have and want to connect with us. But also reach out to check out our website. You can email us at that general info email, but I'll also type my email in the chat really quickly too. We have our contact phone numbers for our Oahu office, but also we have a smaller office in Maui County. So if you live or reside or work in Maui County and are looking for more specific resources there, please feel free to reach out to our Maui County office. But really, if you call any of our offices, we'll do our best to try to help you statewide in pointing you in the direction of what those resources could be. Take a free online screen. That small bit.ly link will take you there. Or if you go to our website as well, you can find those free online screening tools. Like I said, it's just a really great starting point. And I realize I can't like really talk and type at the same time. So I'll double check my email address to make sure it's correct. Okay, looks good. Okay, so that is my email. If you have any questions about this presentation that pop up later today, please feel free to reach out. If you are looking for more specific types of resources or research that is available, please feel free to reach out. I will do my best to help point you in the right direction or to answer those questions. And I think it's a good time to pass it back maybe to Maka to open up to any questions that may have popped up.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Amanda. That was such a great presentation. So excellently facilitated. And I think it was really great to have just be interactive. You know, I think it's a tough topic that we're talking about. So I hope the participants on this call appreciated having some of that interactive activity and just kind of get the brain flowing. Okay. Again, so folks, if anybody has questions, I know she answered a couple questions throughout the presentation, but if you have any other ones that kind of have popped up in the last 20 minutes or so, please feel free to drop them into the chat or the Q&A box. We did have one actually a little bit earlier. Does Hawaii see a wide variation in rates of suicide between different ethnic or racial groups? Someone had commented on that because they exhibit that same similarities or those similar issues in Wisconsin. Do you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I know kind of off the top of my head if I can answer that question really specifically. I know we see different kind of marginalized populations or different like age groups, for example, or geographic locations that are more at risk for suicidality. But really, when it comes to suicide, it's kind of across the board, right? Different socioeconomic statuses could be at risk. So I'm not sure if I have the exact kind of numbers of what we see as far as race, ethnicity. It could be there. I know the Department of Health really is the one that collects a lot of that info, but I'm not sure how much they aggregate it or dive deep into what those differences are. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. We had a question in the chat, and if open to how much you want to share about yourself, Amanda, but people are praising you for such a great presentation. And I want to ask, what's your background as your experience, you know, as a speaker? You know, you have a wealth of knowledge. If you're interested in like sharing, you know, kind of a little bit your story and how you've gotten to where you are today and your interest in mental health.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your kind words and comments in the chat. So yeah, my journey to where I have gotten today has been kind of a longer one, I feel like, and kind of all over the place at times too. But mental health was always something that I've always been really interested in, and kind of passionate about. I myself have mental health struggles like in the past and currently. And I've had several friends as well have mental health struggles as well, from like serious mental illness to thoughts of suicide. So like the whole kind of range, right? And when I was younger, it was really talked about. I mean, I'm only 32, right? I mean, I feel a lot older, but my back feels a lot older, right? But you know, it wasn't something that was really talked about openly, and finding information was really hard. So when I, you know, graduated and we started going to school, mental health was always the topic area that I gravitated to. So like all of my research and papers I wrote and things of that nature was always directed towards that. And I'm really grateful that I found an organization that kind of intersects public health and mental health, right? So it's not that like mental health clinician type of role, but working in a community sense, building common language to allow people to have conversations about mental health, because I think that is really important. If we can provide our youth with a language to talk about things, then they're going to talk about it, right? And empower themselves and educate themselves and help support each other too. So like I said, it's been kind of a journey, but it's always something I've been very passionate about in my personal life, but also in my professional life as well. And I am glad that it seems like I have a lot of knowledge. I've taken a lot of trainings and I've done a lot to kind of educate my own self. And so it's a continuing journey, right? I'm always watching things and having conversations and wanting to learn more. But yeah, so that's kind of like a summary of
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. Got a couple more questions. Do you have any resources for the elementary age group? Student ages?
Hmm.
Please.
Yeah. So for the elementary ages, we do have a training that we have offered before. It's called Keiki Self-Care. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you should be able to find a recording on it. But it's essentially kind of how to practice self-care with little ones, right? So how to learn like different kind of breathing exercises, starting little meditation exercises. There's different activities, like coloring pages that you can download from our website as well to identify like emotions, and then what makes you feel better. So as far as like mental wellness type of resources, I know I can direct you in that sense. But as far as like the elementary age young one is experiencing mental health challenges themselves or experiencing a crisis, I would still reach out to those mental health professionals, whether it is a school counselor within the school systems. The social and behavioral health specialist would be a really great person to reach out to. Or you can go to your general practitioner, right? Just your medical doctor and say, hey, you know, do you have like a referral that you can give us to a mental health professional? Those would be my recommendations for the younger ones. But if you're looking for those wellness activities or information, check out our website or email me and I can send those your way.
Great, thank you. We had a question come in. Do you see this increase in mental health as a direct relationship with an increase in people being judgmental towards each other? Ooh, loaded question.
Yeah, can you read it one more time?
Yeah. Do you see as this increase in mental health as a direct relationship with an increase in people being more judgmental towards one another?
Mm.
Is there some correlation that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can speak to that like on a on like a research based answer, or like coming from a research based place, but I mean just like kind of anecdotally and what we see has been happening like in our world today, in our country today, and what has been happening for a long time as well. We know that some people still discriminate, right? Or still judge others when things are different from what they know, right? Or that they are not used to, or they're maybe ignorant about. And we know that when people are like bullying others or discriminating against others, of course, that's going to have an impact on someone's mental health, right? Over time, it's going to have an impact on their self-esteem. It's going to have an impact on their ability to feel like they can be themselves, right? Or they can live a full and thriving life for whatever that may be, right? So I think I mentioned earlier that there is a lot of stigma that's still associated with mental health, right? But people think it's just something inherently wrong with that person, or something that they can just snap out of. Like, why can't they just handle it, right? And get over it on their own? And it is a lot more than that. So I think if we have more grace, right, and understanding and compassion for other people, then it's going to help kind of moving away from that judgmental place if you are in that. Yeah, I'm not sure if I actually answered that question. I'm so sorry.
That's great. I think that's a great answer. We have one more because I know it's kind of running up to the end of our training, but you mentioned previously that you've taken mental health first aid for youth training. Is this a free training? Can anyone take it? Do you have any like resources that or where folks can sign up to attend that training?
Yeah, definitely. So the Youth Mental Health First Aid and the Mental Health First Aid program is an international program. Actually, originally started in Australia, came to the United States, I think around in 2008. But we do offer both of those trainings here in Hawaii. Mental Health America of Hawaii is one of the organizations that offer them. So if you go to our website and you go to our Get Connected page, you can see where we post online training. So pretty much all, like 99.9% of our presentations we do at no cost, open to the community. So if you see that we are offering an upcoming youth mental health first aid or adult mental health first aid training, you can absolutely sign up with us. But I know that it is kind of a national training. So I would check in with other kind of nonprofits or organizations. If you go to the mental health first aid website, you can look and see which presentations are being offered in your area. A lot of them have moved into virtual settings as well. So you may be able to kind of hop on one, maybe on another state if they're doing that virtual type of platform, but absolutely there are opportunities to take that. And if it's through our organization, we would absolutely love to have you, but there are opportunities across the country too.
Sorry, one more question and then we'll wrap it up. Someone had dropped into the chat. In your experience, has decreased self-esteem, depression, etc., increased with the increase of social media platforms? You know, and if so, like how we as those participating in the call combat this?
I think the short answer is yes. Right. When it comes to social media, it's just such a big thing, right? And we hear some good things about social media, right? There's some benefits of social media, but there's also some pretty negative things about social media as well. And I don't think social media is something that we can necessarily control, right? Or control our youth's use of them. But we can encourage our youth to utilize social media in healthier ways, right? Having those conversations so that youth know that what they see represented on social media does not reflect real life, right? It does not reflect reality. A lot of times on social media, people are only posting like the good parts of their lives, right? Their accomplishments, the things that they're happy about and they're excited about. And what they don't show is all of the bad things that are happening too, right? No one in this world is perfect. No one's life is perfect either. So it's kind of an unrealistic comparison and you comparing yourself to other people. So making sure that youth are aware of that, making sure that youth are always safe when they're on social media as well. Like safety comes first and foremost, especially when you're making connections with people who you don't necessarily know on a personal level, right? You can connect really easily with people who have similar interests and hobbies as you do, but always please make sure that safety is in mind. And what we have seen too is that there has been a push by social media platforms in suicide prevention too. So there are ways for you to report someone who you think may be in a crisis or having thoughts of suicide, and it works differently across all platforms, but really what that platform does is it connects with that person and tells the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. So it tries to like, here's this resource, right, for you to connect to if you are struggling. So we and like I said, there's some good things, there's some bad things about social media. I think that's one of those things we could spend probably all day talking about. But I think if we encourage healthy behaviors and healthy habits on social media, then it could have positive impacts, right? For our youth to be able to connect with each other and to learn more things and maybe even be advocates themselves. But we also have to be careful about the downfalls and the bad sides, because absolutely it affects someone's self-esteem, experiences of depression, their mental health in general too. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Amanda, for such a wonderful presentation today that hopefully we're sending off folks on a good note, on a, you know, on a good use of their time heading into their weekend. Thank you all to those who joined today on the webinar. Thank you to the team behind the scenes who've been helpful. I wish you all the best. Happy Aloha Friday. And I look forward to seeing you on another webinar. Take care, everybody. Mahalo, Amanda.